Hey guys, in this project we're going to be building a MusicFind application that will be able to search for artists using the Spotify API. It'll return a set of results and we'll get that update, and then we can display the results and click on one, and that'll take us to an artist page, and from there we can find the albums and we can link to Spotify. So this is an example right here. We're using Bootstrap as well. And then what we'll do is just type something in, and as soon as we add something here, it's going to fire off a method called search artists, which will reach out to the API and return the results. So I'll keep typing here, and you'll see that it'll keep changing. We get to Aerosmith, and we'll click on this one here. They're ordered by relevance. Click on it, takes us to a details page with a name and image, and then all the different albums. We can click on one of these and it'll open up in Spotify. Alright, we can go back, and if we just clear this form out, that clears the results out. Now we'll be using a couple different things. We're going to use Iron Router, which we've used before. We're also going to use the session package so that we can basically store the artists in the session, and we'll also be using the HTTP package so that we can make our requests. Alright, so hopefully you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, we're going to get started on the MusicFind application. Now, first thing you want to do before we do anything with our app is you want to register a new application with the Spotify API. So you'll have to go to developer.spotify.com and just create an account. It's free, and then log in, and then you should be able to create an app. Okay. Now, I already created MusicFind here. So once you do that, you want to put in the name, the description. You can put your local host as your website or whatever you want, and then just add your localhost 3000 callback as in the redirect URI, and then you should get a client ID and a client secret. Now, for what we're doing, we're not going to have to add the client secret or client ID, but it is good to register your application anyways in case you want to do something where you do need it. Alright, so get that set up, and then we're going to, we're going to open up a command line, and I'm using Commander, but of course you can use whatever you'd like. And then we're going to generate a new Meteor app. So let's say Meteor, create, and we're going to call this MusicFind. Alright, so once that's done, we're going to cd into MusicFind, and I'm also going to open it in the Atom editor. Okay. Now we're also going to need the Iron Router, and we also want the session package so that we can use sessions. So I'm going to go back to my terminal, and I'm going to go to, let's see, oh, we're already in MusicFind. So from here, let's do Meteor add iron router. Okay, that'll install the Iron Router. And we also want to install the HTTP package. So let's say Meteor install HTTP. I'm sorry, not install, add. And I think it's just called HTTP. Yep, and then we also want to do Meteor add session. Okay, so now that we have those set up, let's just run Meteor, which will start our application. And we're going to go to our MusicFind folder, and I'm going to create a new folder called lib. And in here is where we want to create our router file. So let's say new file, router.js. Alright, we should be able to access our application at port 3000. Okay, so we don't have any routes, that's why we're seeing this right here. So let's go into our router file, and we're going to add router.configure, and we want to specify our layout template, which is going to be called layout. And then we want to map our routes by saying router.map, pass in a function, and let's say this.route, and we want this to be for the home page, so we're going to put a slash and then function, and here we just want to render a template. So we're going to render a template called search. So let's save that, and then we're going to go to our client folder and create a new folder called templates. And in templates we'll have we're going to have a file called layout HTML. And let's create a file called search.html. And inside our layout file, let's put in our body tags, and then here we just want to put render page. Okay, and then let's put a template tag with a name of layout. And then in here, we're going to put our yield. And that's where we'll output the templates. All right, so let's go to search HTML and put our template tag in there. And let's see, we're going to put an input with a type of text, and let's give it an ID of search artists, and give it a name of text and a placeholder, and we'll just say search for artists. Alright, and that's it for now, so we'll save that, and you can see that's down here. Now we're going to go to main.js, and let's remove this. We're not going to need a main HTML anymore. We're also going to delete it from here. Alright, now we're going to get rid of all this right here, but we are going to use this main.js as our main JavaScript file on the client. So let's go ahead and save that. And now you'll see we're just rendering our search template, and that's it. Now I do want to add Bootstrap. That's one thing I forgot to install, so I'm going to go to Projects, Meteor, MusicFind. I have the server running in this console. Alright, and then we're just going to do Meteor, add twbs:/bootstrap. And then that should implement right away. We don't have to include it or anything. Okay, and I'm just going to add to that input, we're going to give that a class as well. Give it a class of form control. Okay. And then let's just put a navbar. So in templates, we'll create a folder called includes. And in there, we'll create a file called navbar.html. And instead of typing it out, I'm just going to grab it from getbootstrap.com. Get started, examples, and starter template. Control U, and then we'll grab this nav. Alright, so let's go back to navbar, and we need to have our template tags with the name attribute of navbar. Template, and then we'll just paste that in. Alright, I'm going to get rid of the navbar fixed top, and we'll change project name to MusicFind. This is going to go to slash, and then we're just going to have a link to the home page. So let's change this to slash and get rid of the active class. Save that, and then we want to include that. So let's go to layout. We're going to put that right here. And then I'm just going to wrap the yield in a container class. All right, so let's save that, and there we go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and stop here, and in the next video we're going to add our event for searching for artists. We want an event every time we hit a key, and then ultimately we want to go fetch from the Spotify API and bring back the artists. All right, so that's it. I will see you in the next video. All right, guys, so in the last video we created our application, and we added the search template, which is just a search box, and then a navbar. So what I want to do now is I want to create the event for when we start to type in here. Okay, so let's go to main.js. That's where we're going to have all our client-side JavaScript, and make sure it's the main.js in the client, not the server. Okay, and in here, let's go ahead and create the event for search. Oops. So we'll say search events and say template. And remember that template is called search. It has the name of search, so that's what we need to put right here. And then we're going to say events. Okay, we'll pass in some curly braces, and then we want to define the key up event for the input with the ID of search artists. Okay, so when that's fired off, it's going to fire this function, and we want to get the whatever's in the input box. So let's say let search text, create a variable called search text, and set it to event.target.value. Okay, and then let's go ahead and just console log that and see what we get. Okay, so we'll reload this, and let's start to type something in, and you'll see that it's going to output whatever is in the input box. All right, now from here, what we want to do is we want to contact the Spotify API and try to match whatever is typed in here with an artist. Now, our API calls, all of the interaction with Spotify is going to go through the server, so it's going to go through the main.js file. So let's go ahead and open that up, and we're going to use something called methods. Okay, so we can define different methods that we can call from the client. So I'm going to get rid of this Meteor startup. We don't need that, and we're going to say Meteor.methods, and then in here we'll put some curly braces, and we want a method called search artists. Okay, so search artists, and that's actually going to take a parameter of the search text. Okay, and then in here we want to define a constant called result, and we're going to set it to HTTP. Now we can use this because we installed the HTTP package. If we didn't install that, we wouldn't be able to use this, but we basically want to do http.call. And then the type of request we want to make to the API is a GET request. And the URL is going to be https api.spotify.com/version1/search. And then we want to attach the query string. So we're going to say query equals, and then let's concatenate on the search text that's being passed in. Okay, now there's a bunch of other parameters we need to use here. We need to do ampersand offset, and we're going to set that equal to 0. We want from the first result, and then we're going to put another ampersand and say limit equals, and you can define whatever you want. I'm going to say 20 ampersand type, and the type is going to equal artist, because you can also search by search other stuff as well. And then the market is going to be equal to US. Okay, and you can set that to different countries if you want. So basically it's going to search by the popular stuff that's in the US. Okay, so that is the request. All right, now that's being stored in results. So what we want to do now is just do a console.log result. Okay, and then we'll save that, And then what we need to do is call this search artist from the client. So let's go back to main.js, and we'll go ahead and in here get rid of that and say Meteor.call, because that's what you use to call a method. And we're passing in search text, but we need to first put the actual method we want to call, which is search artists. And then the second parameter will be search text. Okay, and then the third parameter is going to be a callback or an arrow function, and that's going to take in error and then the response, which I'm just going to call artists. Okay, so let's go ahead and check for the error. Okay, if there's an error, I'm just going to console.log it. Okay, else then let's console.log artists. And I did this wrong in the server. I don't want it to console log this. I want to return it. Alright, so we can see what it gives us. So make sure everything's saved, server and client, and let's reload this. And I'm going to type in an A, and this is what we get back. So it's an object, and inside here we have another object called data, then we have another object called artists, then we have another array called items. This is where all the results are stored. Okay, so you can see this first result has the name of, what is it, a boogie with something, the hoodie, a boogie with the hoodie. That's the first result. Now as I keep typing here, let me just close this up. It's going to keep giving us stuff. Okay, so I'm going to get to Aerosmith, which is a rock band, and if we look at the returned items here, you'll see we get Aerosmith as the first one. So it's kind of the items that we need are kind of buried. So instead of returning just the result, we want to return result.data.artists.items. Okay, so that'll give us the actual array of results. So if I reload and now I type, you'll see we just get a bunch of objects, which is what we want with all this data. So we're going to stop here, and in the next video what we're going to do is when we catch that, the artist, we're going to put that into a session value, and then we'll be able to access that session value from the template and loop through the artist and display them. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing next. Hey guys, in this part we're going to take the artists that we fetch from the API and output them here every time we type in something in this input box. So in the last video where we left off is this search artist key up event, and after we fetch the artist through our server, we're just console logging it. Okay, so now what we want to do is use this session package by just saying session, and then we're going to say .set. We want to set this as artists, and we want to pass in the artists that we get as a response. Okay, so let's save that. And then all we have to do is now create a helper function inside a new template and output that here. Okay, so we're going to create in templates a new file called artists.html. Okay, and then what we'll do here is let's put in our template tag and give it a name of artists. Okay, now I want this to actually output from the search template under the search bar. So if we go to search HTML and we want to go right under the input, and I'm just going to put a line break, and then we're going to do artists. Okay, and we'll save that. Now we're getting an error here because there is no such template. That's because I didn't save it. So if I save it, you'll see that that error goes away. And then what we want to do in this file is loop through the artists. Now right now it's not going to know what that is because we're not going to be able to access that session value. So what we have to do is go to main.js, and we're going to add a helper function. So let's do template.artists.helpers. and then we're going to have a function for artists, and we just want to return session.get this time because we're getting it, and we want to get whatever is in artists. So now that we did that, we have access to artists from within the template. So let's go back to artist.html, and we're going to loop through them by saying each artists, and for now let's just output the name. Okay, we'll save that. Let's go in here and type A, and you'll see we get all those results every time I type. Awesome. So now we just want to format these. Now notice that when I go back to it being empty, these are still here, and I don't want to do that. I want to basically clear this out, and that's really easy to do. All we got to do is go to main.js, and let's go right here, and we're going to say if search text is equal to nothing, then let's do session.set artists, and we're going to set it to null. Save that, and now if I delete these, it clears out completely, which is what we want. Okay, so let's go back to artist.html, and for now I'm just going to get rid of that, and we're going to put in a class of row. Okay, and then let's put in another div, and this is going to have the class of callMD12. I want it to go all the way across, and then we'll put another div with the class of search. We'll just say search res for search results, and then well, which will give each one a gray background and some padding. Okay, then we'll put in h4, and in here we're going to have a link, and this is going to be the name, and then under that I'm going to check for genres because it comes back with genres. Not all of them have it, so that's why I'm going to just say if genres, and then we're going to just put in a div. Oops. And actually we don't want a class, just a div, and then let's say strong genre and set that to genres. Alright, so let's try it, and there we go. We get each result, and if it has genres, it'll display those for us. Good. Now we want to be able to click on these links, and that'll take us to an artist details page, so that's what we're going to get into next. Alright guys, so we're now able to search for music, and we have this live update with results as we type. Now we want to make it so that if we click on one of these, it takes us to a details page. So let's go to our artist.html where we have our link, which is going nowhere right now, but we're going to change this to artist / and then we want to input the ID. Okay, so let's save that, and now we need to create this route. So we're going to go into router.js, and let's go right under this and say this.route, this.route, and then we're going to pass in here /artist /:ID, which is basically a placeholder for the parameter. And then we'll have the function, and we're going to do some stuff here. We're not just going to load a template. We need to make another HTTP call to Spotify. Actually, we need to make a couple. We need to make one to get the artist info as well as get the albums. So we're going to do a Meteor call, and we want to call this get artist singular, and then we need to pass along whatever ID is in the URL, and we can get that by saying this.params.id. Okay, and then the next parameter is going to be an arrow function, and it's going to give us either an error or the results, which I'll call artist. So let's check for the error, and if there is one, I'm just going to console.log it. Else, then let's for now let's just console.log artist. Okay, so let's save that, and then we need to go back to our server main.js and create another method. So we're going to just put a comma right here, and then this is going to be get artist. All right, and then that's going to take in an ID, and then let's see, we're going to kind of do what we did up here. Let's copy this, except we're going to change the URL. It's going to be, actually it's going to be much easier, so I'm going to take everything off after the v1, and then we want to put in here artists / and then just concatenate on the ID, and that should give us the artist info. Now it's not going to be in this artist items, so I'm going to get rid of that. It's just going to be right in data, so that's what we want to return. So let's save that. Now once we do that, let's see, once we fetch the artist and we get it, we then want to render a template called artist. So let's go right here and just say this.render, and we want to render artist, and then we want to pass along artist as the data. So second parameter, we're going to say data and set that to artist. All right, so now we're going to create that template. We'll say new file and call this artist.html. And let's put in our template tags. And then let's put in h1. And we should be able to now just say name. All right, so let's save this and try it all out. I'm going to reload. Okay, we're getting a crashed here. Let's see, router.js, and what's going on here? So that ends there. This.route. This should be a comma, not a period. All right. Okay, so I'm going to click here, and that brings us to the artist template, and we're passing in the data. We're also logging, well, we're outputting the name. But if we look down here, this is what we get. Pretty much the same stuff as with the search. We get the name, the URL for Spotify, followers, and then genres. We also get images. What I want to do here is output the first image, okay, because it's in an array called images. Now, we can't, let's see, you may think that we could do something like this, image source, and then say images, and we want the first one, so 0, and then we want this right here, the URL, so we would do .url. Okay, but if we save that, that's not going to work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to get the image in the route and then pass that in. So let's go back to router, and we're passing in the artist object here as the data, so we'll just add another property to that. So let's say artist dot, and then we'll just call it the image and set that to artist dot images 0 dot URL. Okay, so now we should have access to the image. So let's save that and go back in here, and then we'll just put in the image and save. And there we go. All right, now this image is going outside of the container. We don't want that. I'm going to give it a class of thumbnail, which will give it a little styling as well, but it's not going to restrict it. So what I'll do is go in main CSS and say dot thumbnail and set the width to 100%. And there we go. Okay. So the next thing we want to do in the next video is we want to list all the albums down here. So for that, we need to make another request, and that's what we'll do in the next video. Alright guys, so in the last video we created our artist template and we're able to fetch data and output the name of the band and the image. Now I want to get the albums. So for that we need to make another request to Spotify. So in our router.js where we did the get artist, we're actually going to go inside of the success, which is right here, and we're going to make another call. So let's say meteor.call. Let's see, meteor.call, and we're going to pass. We're going to pass in here get albums, which we'll create in a minute. All right, and we want to pass along the artist ID, which is coming from this, which we can grab with this.params.id. And then we have our arrow. Okay, so this is going to take error and pass back albums, and then we'll check for the error. And we'll log it, else. And then what I'll do is grab this and cut it and paste that into this call. Now the albums, we want to take the albums and just add it onto this artist object. So right here we can just say artist dot albums, and we'll set that equal to albums. So now we should have access to that. So let's save it. And what we'll do is create, let me just make sure. See what's going on here. We didn't create the get albums yet. So let's go to our server main.js, put a comma there, and then this is going to be get albums, and that's going to be passed in the artist ID. And then let's just copy this, paste that in. And then we're going to say artist slash, and then this is going to be artist ID. And then we just need to do slash albums. And that should get them for us. Okay. And then that's going to be in an items array. So we want to just do dot items. That's what we want to return. So let's save that. All right, and then let's create in templates a new file called albums.html, and then we'll put in our template tags. Okay, and then we should have access to albums, so we're going to loop through them. Let's put in a div with the class of well. Whoops. All right, and then we'll have another div and give that a class of row. And then another div, and that's going to have a class of call xs9. Okay, I want to split this into two. This will have an h4 with the name of the album, and then we're going to put another div, another column, and give that a class of call. This shouldn't be ms. This should be xs, extra small. Call xs and 3. All right, and then this is going to be the button to go to the Spotify page for that album. So we'll put in a link. And this is just going to say view. Let's also add a target of _blank so it opens in a new window. And this is going to go to external URLs. URLs dot Spotify. Okay, and I'm just going to add a class of BTN and BTN default. And let's save that. Let's see, why is it not? Oh, we didn't include the albums template. So the albums template should be included in, let's see, it's going to go in the artist template. So under the image, we're going to put albums. And there we go. So now we have all of the Aerosmith albums. If I click view, it'll go ahead and open up that album in Spotify. Okay, last thing I want to do is just put a go back up here. So let's just put a link to slash, and we'll also give this a class BTN default. Okay, so now we can easily go back. All right, great. So that's it. We created an application that can search for music artists and get their info, get the albums and list those and link them to Spotify. All right, thanks for watching, guys. That's going to be it for this project, and I will see you next time.